Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, we are going to be discussing another topic which until recently I had not realized was actually super controversial, and that is spanking your children and whether or not it is abuse. But before we get into it, make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy. Stay subscribed to my channel if you're not already, and ring the bell so that you get notified whenever I upload new content. And let's jump right in. Okay, so you guys know sometimes I like to have a Coke while I am sitting here discussing with you guys. So I've got my cherry today. Plus, I napped earlier and I had a headache when I woke up, just a little bit. And it's still lingering. Like, I don't know what the science behind it is. I need to ask my chiropractor because sometimes when I wake up from naps, I have a really bad headache. But it's not always when I wake up in the morning, so it's weird. But anyway, we're gonna jump right in. So what prompted me to talk about this was I saw an article going around on Facebook where Kelly Clarkson was talking publicly about spanking her children. I'm sorry if you guys can hear that. I swear he always does something to mess up my videos. Okay, you done? He was just stationary flapping his wings. I think they do that as a form of like exercise and stretching because they're, you know, domestic pets and they don't fly around everywhere like they do in the wild. Yeah, you good? Okay. All right. So what I was saying was Kelly Clarkson was very public about the fact that she spanks her children to keep them in line. And at that point, like, I knew this was a controversial topic, but I didn't realize just how controversial it is. I just thought, oh boy, let's read the comments, and you know, I was prepared for argument, like all kinds of arguing, but I was not prepared for the extremes that people will go to defend the fact that spanking is abuse, and there's no way you're gonna change their minds on it. So I wanted to just break that down today and share my thoughts, so that's what we're gonna do. All right, so to start off with, I'm kind of just gonna break down some things for you guys. I'm gonna start with, you know, what is spanking? Why do we spank our kids? What is the point? And then I'm gonna go over some definitions like violence and abuse, and we're just gonna sort of go from there. So spanking, I am going to put the definition like up here somewhere, but I've got it right here on my iPad, just so that I remember exactly what I'm talking about. So we have spank, slap with one's open hand or flat object, especially on the buttocks, as a punishment. And then their little, you know, example is she was spanked for spilling ink on the carpet. And then that's the verb. And then as a noun, a slap with one's hand, open hand, especially on the buttocks. And then it says when his father caught him, he got a spank. So basically we're talking about a very light kind of on the rear, either with the hand or with a flat object, as it says. Typically it's a wooden spoon. There are other objects I'm sure that people are using or have used, but a common one is a wooden spoon. So that is the definition of spanking. So why do we spank? We spank to discipline our children and to enforce right from wrong. And if there's any other reason that, I mean, that's the root of it, is to discipline our kids. Now, if you're spanking because like you're mad at your child, or just because you're upset with them or because they annoy you or something else like that, then you are spanking for the wrong reason. That is not the reason to spank a child. When you're spanking your child, you should be clear, I told you this was wrong. For starters, don't spank them for something they didn't know was wrong. That's not cool. First time offense, you explain to them this is wrong. Next time I have to spank you. Next time happens, you say, remember we talked about this. This is wrong. You're not allowed to do this. And you spank them. And if you are angry at your child, that is not going to go over well. That's just going to make them afraid of you in the long run, and it's going to cause long-term damage if they see it as like, my parents are angry with me. It should be coming from a place of, I don't like doing this any more than you do, but, this is me disappointed in you for messing up, but this is me following through in teaching you right from wrong. And the Bible says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. So that is the definition of spanking, and that is when and why you should spank. Now we're going to move on to the next definition. All right, so next we have the definition of abuse. So again, I will be putting a screenshot here or here somewhere for you to be following along, but basically there is kind of 3 main points of what abuse can mean here. So we have abuse as a verb, means to use something to bad effect or for a bad purpose, misuse. So for the example, the judge abused his power by imposing the fines. We have the second definition for a verb is to treat a person or an animal with cruelty or violence, especially regularly or repeatedly. Riders who abuse their horses should be prosecuted. That's the example. And then we have as a noun, we have the improper use of something, so like alcohol abuse. And then the second definition, we have cruel and violent treatment of a person or an animal. A black eye and other signs of physical abuse is what they have for the example. So we're just going to kind of break these down a little bit. So basically we have abuse, to use something to bad effect or for a bad purpose, misuse. So if you have malintent when you spank, because that is what I want to make clear today as well. I'm not just saying spanking isn't abuse. If spanking is done in a normal and healthy way, it's not abuse. There are people who spank their children, but really it's abuse. So I want to also clarify and talk about when spanking becomes abuse. But when I say spanking isn't abuse, I mean normal spanking as a healthy form of punishment. That type of spanking is not abuse. If you say you were spanked and it was something a little more than that, then that might not just be a simple normal spanking, if you will. So this is what we're going to kind of break down here. So use something to bad effect or bad purpose, misuse. So if you are spanking or getting spanked too often, or for something you didn't know was wrong, or something that really shouldn't be that bad, like you forgot to do your chores like one time or something, that is turning into abuse. That is misuse of the ability to spank. You shouldn't spank your kids, and you shouldn't be getting spanked if you didn't know it was wrong, or if, too often for things that aren't that big a deal. That is when it starts to become abuse. Now, the second definition, this is the big one: treat a person or animal with cruelty or violence, especially regularly or repeatedly. That particularly is when spanking becomes abuse. If you are getting spanked, if you were spanked regularly as a kid, and if it was with malintent, if the intent was to harm, and your parents didn't really care about your well-being, that's abuse. If you are spanking your children with malintent and you want to cause them pain and you have a cruel heart, cruel feelings toward them, then that is abuse. It's not a normal spanking. That's abuse. And then we have the improper use of something, and they give alcohol abuse. That's like, Mike's Hard Lemonade or Smirnoff or a little beer, once a day or a couple times a week to kind of relax, unwind, that's fine. But when you get blackout drunk all the time and it causes you to make stupid decisions, that's alcohol abuse. That's what we're talking about. If you spank too often and you don't spank for the right reason and you're full on like beating your child instead of just a little spank, that's when this is crossing into the territory of where it becomes abuse. Now, moving on to my third and final definition that I actually have here. Again, I will put it up on the screen. We have violence. So violence is behavior involving physical force intended to hurt, damage, or kill someone or something. And then they have strength of, like a sub-definition, I guess, strength of emotion or an unpleasant or destructive natural force. And the example they gave is, I was surprised at the violence of my feelings. So that is the definition of violence. Now, if you are spanking with the intent to hurt or damage your children, that's not spanking, that's abuse. And if you are reading along with all these definitions and listening to what I'm saying, and you're thinking that violence and abuse correlate and line up with the definition of spanking, then something was not right with you growing up. Either you weren't spanked as a kid, so that you don't really know the difference, or you might have sadly been abused as a kid. And if that's the case, if you're hearing these definitions of violence and abuse and you're like, yep, that's me, then I would like to sincerely apologize for your upbringing, because nobody should go through that. That is not a normal spanking at all. Spanking should not result in you being afraid of your parents or living in fear. Parents, your children should not be afraid of you because you spank. That's when you know that you've gone too far, or if you were spanked as a kid and it was like this, that's when you know that your parents went too far. So now we're kind of clear on those definitions. So we're going to talk about some other aspects of spanking and other forms of punishment, and then I'm going to go into a little more depth of what I was seeing in the comment thread for that Kelly Clarkson article. Now, spanking, I'm not saying that spanking should be your go-to form of punishment. Obviously, like I said, you don't want to spank your child if you haven't made it clear, like, that this is wrong or this isn't okay. You need to make it clear the first time, hey, we don't allow that in this house, or that's wrong, or whatever. And then if they do it again, you spank them, or whatever form of punishment you use in your household. But I'm not saying spanking should be the go-to form of punishment. It goes along with what I was saying about spanking too regularly and repeatedly. That's not the best idea for spanking. So you might think about other forms of punishment, like a timeout or something else. And I'm not saying that spanking is the best punishment for everybody, and that other forms of punishment don't work. I'm not advocating that spanking is the only way and nothing else works, so please don't misunderstand that. But spanking is good for certain situations, and other forms of punishment are good for other situations. So let me elaborate on that. When my brother was little, I don't know how old he was, but he had trouble wanting to pick up his toys. He didn't want to clean up. And my mom, she didn't spank him. She would take his hand and physically make him pick up the toy and put it away. And this happened maybe 2 or 3 times in a row before she finally said, like on the 3rd day or whatever, she said, okay, let's clean up. And he looked at her, and then he picked up his toys on his own, because he had learned that the toys were going to get picked up and put away, whether he wanted to or not. So he learned that it was easier if he just obeyed, rather than have to be forced. That taught him a more valuable lesson than spanking would have. Also, stuff like if your kid is forgetful or there's something they don't want to do, so they don't do it, whether it's, take their shower or do their chore, it could be more effective if you say, oh, you forgot or you didn't want to do that? Okay, then I'm going to make you do it 3 times right now. And then they're going to be glad that they only have to do it once a day or once every other day or however often it is. That, in my opinion, is more valuable than spanking. If it's a situation of like forgetting to do their chores or forgetting to put something away or, just not wanting to, okay, then you can do it 3 times in a row right now. And then they're going to realize that it was a lot easier to just do it the first time. Another thing is sending your kid to bed early or making them physically pay you with their money. Those are other good forms of punishment that worked in my household. I valued time and I did not want to go to bed early. So that was an excellent form of punishment, because whatever it was, I didn't do that again because I did not want to go to bed early. My brother, for him, it was money. My mom would physically charge him money for whatever it was she wanted him to stop doing, and he stopped because he didn't want to part with his money. Whereas that didn't work for me. I was like, whatever, I'll get more money, but I can't get back time. I can earn more money, but I can't earn back time. So I never cared about parting with money. That wasn't an effective method of punishment for me. It was going to bed early that was, more effective. So I'm not saying that spanking is the go-to cure-all for everything. I'm not saying spanking should be your first choice. And if it is, if your initial thought is, oh, I gotta spank them, and what they did wasn't that bad, then we're leaning more towards the side of abuse as well. Okay, now I'm going to talk about some of the things I was seeing in the comment thread, and again, I have like screenshots that I'm going to post. I just have them pulled up on here so that I can sort of remember what it is I'm talking about. So, these were just comments in the thread on the article. So it was a link to the article, and then there was like the comment thread with what people had to say. So this person, and I will probably just like blur out names just for privacy reasons. And I'm not gonna read the whole comment because it's here on the screen for you to read. But this person was basically arguing that, like, yeah, sure, because hitting children who are growing and learning how to regulate their emotions and don't know how because they are kids, and this is how you teach them, like, sure, that's an excellent way to teach kids how to process and regulate their emotions. And you can see below my comment where I said this isn't about a child's emotions. Children are smart enough to know when they are defiant and break house rules, and it's about correcting that behavior. So again, to reiterate, you don't spank a child because, oh, my child's angry and they're in trouble for getting angry. No, they're not in trouble for getting angry. They're allowed to be angry. If you want to spank them because they broke a house rule and they're angry, You're not spanking your child, or you shouldn't be spanking your child because they're angry. In my opinion, they're allowed to be angry that the rules don't apply to them. You're spanking them because they broke the rules. Now, if you want them to kind of have time to control their emotions, that's maybe where a timeout comes in, or you send them to their room and just say, go lie down until you, it's not like a punishment of go to your room. It's like, go lie down until you feel better. That is how you would handle the emotion thing. But you don't spank because the child is processing their emotions and trying to figure that out. That is absolutely the wrong reason to spank your child. So if you are spanking your child for that reason, or if you were spanked as a kid for that reason, that is absolutely not okay. Because as this person said, children are learning to control their emotions because they're children and they don't know how yet. They're allowed to feel and express themselves. They should be, anyway. And that is not why we're spanking. We're spanking for misbehavior. And if they're angry or if they're upset that the rules don't apply to them, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but this is a house rule and you're gonna learn to follow it one way or another. You shouldn't be spanked. You should never spank anybody or punish anybody at all for feeling what they feel. That is not healthy at all. We have another comment here. Anyone who thinks spanking a child is not abuse is sick in the head. Absolutely disgusting to harm a child. And then someone replied and said, you clearly needed, I think this person meant like needed to be spanked as a kid. And then someone says, I don't know, I turned out great, I turned out fine, I turned out great. Kids nowadays are stabbing people, so yeah, I'm sure yelling will do the trick. So, again, if you are telling me that spanking is abuse, I'm going to question your childhood. And I'm going to wonder whether you were spanked at all or whether you were spanked in a healthy way. And I will say, and I'm not trying to call anybody out because frankly I don't know names of these people, but several of the people in this comment thread who were really hardcore arguing that spanking is abuse later ended up admitting that they were beaten as kids. And that just makes me really sad that their parents went off the wall and now they don't even know about a normal, healthy spanking as a form of discipline because they were beaten as a child. So, that's really sad. Alright, and next we have this comment. This person says, I was spanked and I turned out fine. Are you sure about that? Yeah, doing totally fine. We understand. Breaking the cycle of abuse is really a self-reckoning and most don't want to face it. Yeah, so I turned out fine. I mean, perhaps there are a lot of people who were abused who are like, yeah, I turned out fine because they don't want to face it. That may be true. But those of us who are saying, I was spanked and turned out fine, like we turned out fine because we were spanked and it wasn't abuse. So if you were spanked and you didn't turn out fine, then you weren't spanked, you were abused. Yeah, so I just want to make something very clear, and that is spanking and abuse are two different things. There's a big difference between spanking your child as a form of discipline and, like beating your child because you're angry at them. Those are two very different things. Spanking is not and shouldn't be abuse. And if it is, then we've got a case of bad parenting. There was another comment on this thread. I don't have a screenshot of it, but it was basically they were talking about if you can't control your temper, then you shouldn't have a child. And their point was that, parents lash out and spank their kids because they can't control their temper. And that is absolutely, again, something that should not be the case. But if it is, that is not a normal spanking. So I just really want to impress that, I don't want to sound like I'm using circular reasoning. Spanking isn't abuse because spanking isn't abuse. No, spanking isn't abuse because, here's the definition of abuse. Here's the definition of violence. those do not correlate with spanking. And if you think they do, then I don't know what to tell you. Either you weren't spanked as a kid, so you don't know the difference, or you were abused as a kid, so you don't know the difference. And yeah. Hi guys, future Megan here. I'm getting ready to edit the video, and I am just realizing another point that I forgot to include here. So some of the people in that comment thread were also talking about, violence towards other adults and why hitting an adult is considered a crime. But why is it okay to hit your child? And my response to this is because typically you hit another adult like you have malice toward them or anger toward them, and you hit them because you're trying to get back at them for something that they did to you, or you just have violent thoughts and you want to hurt them. And that, just to reiterate, because I know I've already said that in this video and I'm gonna reiterate it again later, but that should not be why you spank your child. You should not be spanking your child because you feel violent thoughts or malice or hate or you want to hurt them. That is not why you spank a child. It shouldn't be. So yeah, that is my response. It's a crime because you're not supposed to wrongfully hurt another human. You're not supposed to do it in a form of, you're not supposed to be violent and hurt other people. And when you spank a child, you're not being violent and wanting to hurt them. And if you are, then you're not spanking your children, you're abusing them. So, there you go. Sorry if that's harsh, but that's the truth. You're either spanking them or abusing them. So, there you go. Alright, back to your regularly scheduled rest of the video. Sorry for the interruption. So that is pretty much it. I think I've said everything that I wanted to say. But yeah, so basically what I guess I want you guys to get from this is, unless you are physically beating your child with the intent to harm, and you lost your temper and you're beating them because you're angry at them, and you're full on beating them for no reason, or you're not making it clear why you're beating them, then that's abuse. But a light, tap on the rear, or a spank with a spoon, or another flat object, yeah, it's going to hurt a little, but that's how you teach them right from wrong, and there is the potential for them to get into a lot more trouble down the road if you don't. And there's also the saying, spare the rod, spoil the child, which I have seen to be true. I have seen spoiled children who, one way in which they were spoiled was not getting in trouble as much as they should, and that's just a recipe for disaster further down the line. So I just want to really impress the idea and the fact that spanking, normal spanking, when I say spanking, I mean the light tap with your hand or with a spoon or whatever. That's what I'm talking about when I say spanking, and that is not abuse. And if you think spanking is abuse, then that's not okay, and spanking shouldn't be abuse, and we have to break that cycle of it being abuse, because so many of us were spanked as kids and we turned out better for it. And I also want to impress that spanking doesn't have to and shouldn't be your go-to form of punishment. There are other forms of punishment besides spanking. In my household, spanking was for when you really messed up or there was no other way to get it through your head. Spanking should be more of a last resort. There are other forms of punishment that don't involve spanking if you really have that much of a problem with it. But spanking really is fine, and it's not abuse, and it shouldn't be abuse. And if you think it is, then either you're doing it wrong or you had it done wrong to you as a kid. So yeah, that is basically it. So hopefully I wasn't too all over the place with this. Hopefully it kind of had some structure. I am open to friendly discussion in the comments. If all you want to do is argue with me, then please keep that to yourself. But I'm very open to polite debate and discussion on what your thoughts are on what I said and whether or not you think spanking is abuse and why. So with that being said, I'm going to end the video here, and yeah, so I hope you enjoyed, found that informative or something. If you did, give it a thumbs up, stay subscribed to my channel if you're not already, comment down below what your thoughts are on everything that I said, and you know, whether or not you think spanking is abuse, and ring the bell so that you get notified whenever I upload new content. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.